us a minute, but we could be live. We have one more moment before our faculty live and learn presentations begin. We'll be right with you. Welcome, and thank you for joining us this week for our weekly Live and Learn faculty presentations hosted by the University of Oregon's SAIL program. I'm Laura Fernandez, the Executive Director for the SAIL program, also known as the Summer Academy to Inspire Learning. SAIL is the university's largest pre-college program, busy inspiring students to pursue higher education. We do this in many ways, and one is what you're participating in with us today. So today I am honored to introduce to you our featured faculty presenter, who is straight from the University of Oregon School of Journalism. Ed Madison is with us today. He has a multifaceted career in media and journalism, which began all the way back in high school as an intern at the Washington Post. He earned a CBS television affiliate in Washington, D.C. during the height of Watergate, and at age 22, he was recruited by CNN and became one of the network's founding producers. Subsequently, his own companies produced content for ABC, Paramount, Disney, and Discovery Networks. Ed is now an associate professor at the University of Oregon School of Journalism and Communications, where he enjoys contributing to the next generation of storytellers. Madison is co-founder and executive director of the Journalistic Learning Initiative, a 501c3 educational nonprofit organization that uses journalistic strategies to empower student voice and academic success in partnership with the University of Oregon School of Journalism, Communication, and the College of Education, and now SAIL. Topics today that Ed will cover are some of his initiatives that he's involved with college students, along with opportunities for you as high school students. He'll be talking about the Student Voice Project as well as the Black Student Magazine projects. Ed, it is truly a pleasure to have you with us. I will be here as your host, and students, as you are watching, if you have any questions, please put your questions into the chat, and I will be able to make sure Ed sees your questions. Ed, we welcome you, and
Thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. So let me just clear up one thing. I started my career at 16, and I was as an intern at the CBS affiliate television station, which at the time was owned by the Washington Post. So I didn't own this. I didn't own the station. I don't think I ever would have enough money to to do that. But I just wanted to clear that up. And you know, I gotta say, journalism is just a fascinating profession. You know, I had the good fortune of having a father who was a trailblazer in journalism. So he was the first African American to join the editorial staff of the Chicago Tribune back in 1961. So he covered Dr. Martin Luther King. He covered the Civil Rights Movement, and I had the real fortune of we moved from Chicago to Washington D.C. and just being an eyewitness to history as it was unfolding in terms of many of the events related to the Vietnam War protest and and just all kinds of milestones in terms of the civil rights movement. So, and I think, and then my mom was a school teacher, so she taught fourth and fifth grade, and so our conversations around the dinner table, very much were tied into the current events and things that were unfolding in the world. And the other thing I have to say that my parents really instilled in me was a sense of service, about the importance of really being a contributor in one's community and in one's world. And I think that's what led me to pursue journalism, because journalism, first and foremost, is about, speaking truth to power, to looking at injustices and shedding light on issues that are relevant to people. Sometimes people say journalism gives a voice to the voiceless, because oftentimes, there are people in our communities, whether they be homeless or they're in developing nations that are struggling just for water and things that we may take for granted as just basic needs, who don't have their stories told. And so that's one of the fundamental aspects of journalism. So I'm going to share a little bit about just like what it was like for me to be a 16-year-old in high school. I had a big afro back then, kind of funny looking hair at that time, but it was the thing to do. And I can remember the importance of getting my driver's license, which still today. Although in COVID, you better have your mask with you, but that sort of sense of freedom of being able to venture out, and have some independence. And I stumbled into a high school guidance counselor's office, and saw this poster on the wall about this essay contest. And the contest was going to allow 3 students from all over Washington, D.C. The opportunity to become an intern for 6 weeks at the TV station. So I ended up getting the internship. I wrote an essay that allowed me to get the internship, but not at first. I got to the finalists, and I was sitting there with the judges, and they said, we're really impressed by what you wrote, but doesn't your dad work like at the other TV station across town? And I said, yes. And they said, oh, we're sorry. This is for kids who don't have that leg up. And they sent me home initially, and I was devastated. And then, as it turns out, luck would have it, one of the 3 kids that they had selected chose to drop out for some reason. And they called me back and they said, we met it as a committee, and we reread your essay, and we thought it was really good. And we thought it's not fair to you, just because your dad is also in the media business, that you shouldn't have this opportunity. And so that's what really got me started. And within a couple of weeks, I had a desk, on this morning talk show in Washington, D.C. They were allowing me to come up with ideas for segments. I was on the phone booking guests. I had what we used to call a Rolodex. Think of a Rolodex as like your phone file on your phone, but it's on cardboard and you have to turn it to it's alphabetized. That's what we used to have. We call them Rolodexes. And it was amazing. I mean, I actually had the experience of being in line at a supermarket and hearing 2 people talk about something that I had put on television. And that's when I realized that media was so powerful in terms of shaping opinions, in terms of having having really inspiring, robust discussions about things that are so important in our communities. And it's funny, when I tell people today that I'm a journalism professor, the first thing they bring up is fake news, and I know that journalism has become the story in one sense, in terms of just a lot of controversy and questions about truth and accuracy and all of those things. But what we find is that, well, first of all, the thing that I ask is that when there are these surveys they've done recently, and they've asked, do you trust the media? Do you trust the media? And the numbers of people who say that they trust the news media are embarrassingly low, right? But I think the difference, and I think the distinction sometimes that we don't make is, what are we talking about when we ask that question? Because, what Lester Holt does as the nightly anchor of the NBC Nightly News, and what, let's say, Rachel Maddow does, is very different. There's one is called commentary, where people give their opinions, people like Sean Hannity, and, give their opinions. And then the other is really reading traditional news. And I think in the days when people read newspapers, you remember what those were? They're those things that people line their bird cages with now. When people read newspapers, it was very clear that news was on the front page, editorials were on the editorial page, there were commentaries, there was a sports page, and now those lines are kind of blurred. And I think that's part of the problem, is that people don't necessarily make a distinction between news and opinion. And it's an important distinction to make. The other thing that's changed so much in the media space is social media. So whether it's Facebook or Instagram or Twitter or Snapchat or TikTok, which I still haven't figured out, maybe somebody can, in a question, explain to me why I should be paying attention to TikTok. But the point being is that, it used to, in order to get your opinion out there, you used to have a lot of money and own a TV station or a printing press, right? And it cost millions of dollars to have that power. Now, anyone who's listening now can have an opinion and push a button and share it with people halfway around the world at no cost. So that is also, there's good and there's bad with that. The good is that it increases sort of the access of ideas that are out there, which is a positive thing in terms of people participating in democracy or expressing their opinions. But it also allows for people who sometimes their intentions are not necessarily, in the best interest of people coming together and working together. It allows for, just some bad actors to put stuff out there that's just like made up, made up. So that's kind of how I address that whole question about fake news. At the School of Journalism and Communication at University of Oregon, where I'm a professor, boy, do we have a great, first of all, just a number of colleagues. So, when you think about journalism, don't just think about the writing part of it. There's also the visual part of it. Like, we have 3 really outstanding photojournalism professors who specialize in the art of storytelling with pictures, right? So, if you ever thumb through magazines or you think about, just some of the pictures you may see that capture just the moment, like, for example, if I say World War II, you might think of that historic, kiss in Times Square, that's kind of an iconic photograph from that moment, on V-Day in World War II, or other pictures that sometimes are able to capture a moment of something in a way that video can't. So we teach that. Other aspects or allied fields of journalism include public relations. And I find that a lot of young people at the high school age don't even necessarily know what that is, like public relations. Maybe you heard about it, but what is it? And so we train students in public relations. And what public relations is it is communicating from a business standpoint the message or the importance often of a particular company's point of view. So an example would be, let's say, for God forbid, that there's a medication that's on the market. This actually happened many years ago, where there was a headache medication, kind of like aspirin. I won't say the brand name, but somehow somebody had tampered with the pills, and there were some that were out there that were really dangerous, right? And so this becomes what we call a PR nightmare for the company, because first of all, they don't want people to associate this danger with their brand name, but they also want to warn the public. And so what a public relations specialist does is help them to communicate with the public in a timely and responsible manner. Like, for example, when there's been an oil spill, or when there's any kind of situation that can occur that's unfortunate, when a company finds itself facing a public dilemma. So that's kind of what public relations is. And then the other part that we teach at the School of Journalism and Communication is advertising. And that can also be tricky for some people, because some people think, oh, advertising, that's just selling people stuff, But the way we teach it in our program is really about responsible advertising. So, we've had former students who've created responsible ads that have appeared in the Super Bowl that encourage people to, like look at some of the ads that Nike has done recently. Those would be examples of advertising. Someone's asking about what are some of the careers in public relations. So there is probably one of the ones a lot of people know about is in the entertainment industry. Sometimes celebrities, most major celebrities, will have a publicist, a person who's responsible for kind of helping them to get their face on the cover of magazines, but then also in public relations in the healthcare industry, there are public relations specialists that kind of alert the public about, for example, things like what's going on currently with COVID, making sure that information is portrayed and put out there in a responsible way. There's also internal public relations. So you think of a large company, they have employees that they want to make sure know that the company is, what their benefits are, or, is taking care of certain issues and concerns. And so you'll have public relations specialists who focus on internal issues as well. But I don't want to get too deep into the woods about all that stuff. I want to tell you why I think that journalism is one of the most exciting fields that there is. First of all, other than when you're in the middle of a pandemic, you're usually not behind a desk facing a screen. You're usually out in the field, meeting new people all the time, engaging with new different subjects and areas of curiosity. I had the very good fortune, as Laura mentioned, to be part of CNN as it was launching. And then I was later West Coast producer of a CBS morning program. And I got to go on tour with Michael Jackson. I got to interview people like Tina Turner and Elton John, and all kinds of celebrities in different parts of the world. I've gone to just many countries, and that is one of the benefits of working in journalism, is that you're always being introduced to something new that keeps you thinking and keeps you fresh. So how did I end up in Eugene after doing all that kind of cool stuff? Well, I think some of the stuff I do now is actually just as cool. I was producing a show for A&E Network called A&E Top 10. It was kind of a pop culture countdown show where every week we would have a list, right? So we had a list of like top 10 celebrity chefs. And we did a show on top 10 destinations where, top 10 exotic destinations. And we sent video crews to places like the Amazon, that go down the Amazon River and all that stuff. Well, we did a show on top 10 college towns, and Eugene, Oregon was number 7 on our list. And I came here and I met the people at Travel Lane County, used to be called Savalco, but Travel Lane County. And they really pulled out all the stops. They had walkie-talkies, people, queuing rafts coming down the Willamette River, and they took us to all the wineries and all the great restaurants. And I fell in love with my own story. That's why I live here. I fell in love with my own story. You know, I had been in Los Angeles for about 20 years and had just really realized that that it was time to do something different. First of all, the quality of the air. You know, we may take that for granted here, unless there's a fire like you know the burdens that we had months ago, where the air quality was the worst in the world. We were told, but generally the air quality here is really, really good, and that's a lot different than places like Los Angeles, where there's a lot more cars and a lot more people. So that was one of the things. But then also the quality of life. I mean, I kayak now. You know, I'm a foodie. I love, you know, just experimenting in the kitchen and all kinds of things like that. And we have 3 dogs and 4 chickens, and you know, I have great neighbors like Laura around the corner. And so, you know, in terms of quality of life, the thing that has happened because of the internet, I think, is that you know you can live in great places. You don't have to compromise so much anymore in terms of quality of life, and you can make those decisions and still, you know, work remotely. So some questions here. Any tips on spotting or stopping the spread of fake news? Yeah, so let me address that for a minute. So we actually did a series of videos that are led by students your age that are looking at trust in the media. And if you go to our website, which is journalisticlearning.com, you'll see something on there. Actually, I'm going to share the cover page. I'm going to share here. So let's see here. Wait. Let's see if I got that. Does that work? Yeah. So this is our website. This is our organization's website. And if you look down, and so one of the things that I kind of want to say about this is that this here, students with publication experience outperform their peers in college freshman writing assignments and make fewer errors. So not only is journalism fun because you get to write about and explore topics that are interesting to you, but also it's going to improve your grades, and it's going to have you discover things that you might not otherwise. So we have, during this whole COVID period, something called JLI Extra Credit. What it is it's resources for teachers. And I don't know why that button's not working. There we go. Okay, so it's resources for teachers. And one of the things we looked at was this whole issue of trust in the media. So these are interviews that are led by 10th graders, 10th grade students. Avery and Caden are the 2 students. And there's also worksheets and things on there. And one of the stories is making sense of the election. And 2 of my really dear colleagues, Lisa Hayamoto and Todd Milburn, talk about that. And so to answer the question about spotting and stopping the spread of fake news, one of the things they say is that, first of all, if you come across something and you feel like it really strikes or stirs up a lot of emotion in you, you might want to question that. Like, is that intended, or is it, you know, so if it's really kind of pushing your buttons, you might want to question whether or not it's really accurate, you know, just look a little further. And then the other thing is that, you know, being careful not to just pay attention to the first thing that pops up on Google, or when you do come across some information, like digging a little deeper, like going to the About page and finding out, you know, who's financing this website. You know, are they a nonpartisan group, or do they have an agenda, or, you know, and what we find is that when there's something like a pandemic going on, or when there's something serious happening in the news, people still return to, you know, the tried and true New York Times, NPR, you know, CNN sources for news and information. So Josie wants to know, who's the most fascinating person I interviewed and why? Well, let's see. There's probably a toss-up. So I did a story on a guy named Warren Avis who started Avis Rent-A-Car. Okay, and when I did this, he was in his 70s and he water skied every day. And this story, we did this story in Acapulco, Mexico. It was when I was working on a show that you're probably too young to have ever heard of, but your parents would know. It was called Lifestyles of the Rich and Famous. And I was a producer on this show. And I got to do this story on Warren Avis. And he was such a fascinating and gracious man. You know, the one thing I found is that the people who were the most successful, and I don't define success by how many, you know, like by someone's bank account, but by their character, you know, those were the people who always were offering to help the crew bring their gear in and maybe had food for us. I mean, they really kind of went out of their way to be hospitable. And that taught me a lot. And Warren Avis was like that. And he ran several businesses and he was just a really, really nice man. And then another person I interviewed once that was kind of interesting, and this is going to either make me sound really old because you may not know who she was at all, but I got the chance to interview Elizabeth Taylor once. And now, it was not a sit down with Elizabeth Taylor. It was one of those almost like kind of red carpet things where you're holding a microphone out. But she talked to me for quite a while. And it was pretty interesting. It was very, very interesting. She was a very compassionate person, very much cared about issues like just AIDS and things like that, and really gave a lot of herself to community issues. And so that was another person that I interviewed. About your travel experiences, how does journalism differ from place to place? What is your favorite type of journalism? My favorite type of journalism is travel. I cannot lie. I love traveling. I love food, as I said before. Often when I go someplace, like when we've had, so every 2 years, one of my colleagues and I, we take students to really fantastic places. We've taken students to Cuba, to Sri Lanka. We've taken students to, just this past year, we took students to New Zealand. In Sri Lanka, you know, I made time to take a cooking class, you know, which was really fun. So you know, traveling really enriches one's life. You know, when you're in college, you will be encouraged to explore study abroad programs that will let you experience different places. And I know for many people, when they hear these kinds of things, it can sound like, oh my God, that's so expensive. How would I ever afford to do that? But let me tell you, when there's a will, there's a way, because there are often scholarships and things that are available, or people will start GoFundMe campaigns, or they'll wash cars. You know, if you are really motivated to make something like that happen, you can make it happen. And I would say a good percentage of the students who go on some of these trips that we do, they are able to get scholarship money to cover a good portion of it. So it's not as prohibitive as you might think. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the Journalistic Learning Initiative and this work that I do with my nonprofit. You know, I realized that having two parents that were, I lived in a very stable home, and you know, they both were highly educated, and you know, and I realized that that was really a blessing that not everyone has. And I realized also that, as I've described, journalism was really an outlet for me to discover so many different things in terms of my own growth and development and profession and everything else. And so I stumbled upon this program at Palo Alto High School in Northern California. When I was when you go for a PhD, you have to write basically a book, which we call a dissertation, right? And it's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. And so I stumbled upon this program at Palo Alto High School, run by this woman named Esther Wojcicki. She just retired this year, but had been there about 30 years. And the program, they've got some I want to say 500 plus students out of the 1,800 that go to the school are involved in some form of journalism. So they have their own sports magazine and they have a newscast that they do. And truth be told, Palo Alto is probably one of the wealthiest communities in America. Okay, the school is across the street from Stanford University. It is down the street from Google, and so there's a lot of money there. And I wanted to find out, like when I was observing these students, was there something there beyond the fact that it was a wealthy community that really, something about journalism that really brought out the best in students? And so I did a study where I compared that program to programs in communities that were nowhere near as affluent. And I found out that there is something inherent in how journalism is taught and presented that can really make a difference for anyone watching or listening here. Because, like I said, you get to explore topics that you're interested in. If it's video games, fine. We had sixth graders at Oakley Middle School who were interested in video games. You know what they did? They found the person who designed the game that they like to play, right? And they got him to come to their class and talk with them. And their questions weren't like, how can we play more video games? Their questions were, well, what do I have to learn to do what you do? And how much money do you make? And it became almost like a job shadow. You know, I mean, I know here at Spencer Butte Middle School and some of the other schools, they have kids do a job shadow. Well, that's kind of what it became. And it really opened their eyes to a whole potential career path that they hadn't thought about before. So those are some of the things that journalism allows you to do. But also, you learn how to work collaboratively in teams. You learn how to come up with story ideas and to advocate, like stand in front of peers and say, I think we should do this story and here's why. But probably the really most important part of it is that your work gets published and that work gets published and shared with real people. So your community and your family get to see your work. And what we find is that just that fact alone has young people kind of bring their A game because they realize, okay, this isn't just the teacher's going to read this and, you know, my parents will be upset if I don't get a good grade. All my friends are going to read this too, you know, and so it makes a significant difference. So we're doing a project called the Student Voice that high schoolers anywhere can participate in as long as they have a faculty person to just look over their work. And what it's going to be is a digital publication that you can read on your phone called the Student Voice. And on Fridays, every Friday, starting middle of January, from noon until 1:30, we're going to have what we call a virtual newsroom where high schoolers and their teachers can interact with some of our really top journalism students at the School of Journalism and Communication. And we're really excited about this because we're going to be talking about what's going on in the news that week. We're also going to be hearing pitches from students about stories that they want to write. We're going to be accepting their submissions. And then also some of the best stories we're going to be pushing out to mainstream media. What I mean by that is we're going to be asking companies like OPB and the Register Guard and KLCC and, you know, to publish some of those stories in a student voice section of their website. And so that's pretty cool. And then in May, we're going to have Student Voice Awards, the first Student Voice Awards. It'll be a virtual event because nobody's meeting in person right now and the COVID numbers aren't going the direction that we all want right now. But we're going to be having the Student Voice Awards and acknowledging some of the best writing and work and stuff like that. As a matter of fact, I can put up just a little one sheet here while we're talking that'll give you an idea of what we're doing with that. But yeah, so it's exciting. It's really exciting to share about all these things that are happening. Let me just share this here. I'll share this one because it's up. Yeah, so this is like a one pager about the student voice. And, we are a partnership with the School of Journalism and Communication and also the College of Education. And that's our logo, the student voice there. You can see kind of a prototype or mock-up of like what it looks like on the phone. And schools and teachers that are interested in participating, there's a sign-up sheet and everything else. And like I said, a lot of this information you can ask me about later, or if you just go to our website, there's other stuff. I did want to share a couple of videos. I was worried about them stuttering a bit. But should I try playing one maybe, Laura, you think?
I can try one, and I just wanted to piggyback on
Sure.
your student voice is such an incredible opportunity that we will be offering or placing the links on our on the
Okay.
school website as another
Okay.
portal for students
Yeah.
to
Sure. Great. We have another project that I want to tell you about too. So, there's been a lot of stuff in the news lately related to race relations and some really unfortunate news that has occurred, and yet also a groundswell of support for issues related to improving race relations. And here in Oregon, there are state funds that are set aside to help bridge achievement gaps. And so we're doing a project called Black Student Magazine for African American students, and it's primarily available to students at about 7 high schools here in the Eugene-Springfield area. We meet with them on Wednesdays, and supporting them in creating a magazine as a form of self-expression and pride. And it's a magazine that's for everyone in terms of who will have access to reading it, but it really allows a group of students who and sometimes just feel a little disconnected. They may be one of 7 in Crow or high school, and just don't know other kids their age at different high schools. So that's another project that we're doing. So if you know anybody who might be interested in that, they can still participate in that. But
yeah, we'll link that to our website as
yeah,
well.
sure.
And there is
Yeah,
a quick question in the
sure.
chat about your programs that you mentioned. If they want to participate in the student voice, how do they know if they have a teacher or faculty in their school to represent them?
Yeah. So here's what journalism teaches you. Let me put it this way. I'm going to answer this question this way. So many times we can think that we're just kind of dealt the cards we're dealt with in terms of our schooling and everything else, instead of like turning it around and saying, you know what, this is my education and I want to have some say in how my education is going to unfold. Yeah, I know there are these requirements I have to take, and I got to do this and I got to do that. But, this is my life and I want to, make something of it, right? So it could be a little scary at first, but sometimes you got to go enroll a teacher in supporting what you want to do, and you say, hey, I heard about this really cool thing called the student voice, and I need a teacher who's just going to read my work before we submit it because that's one of the prerequisites. Will you be that teacher for me? And say that, speak up for yourself. And you'll find, when you think about the cost of college and the expense, I can't tell you how unfortunate it is. Sometimes students don't take advantage of office hours, which is when you can come and talk, sit down with the professor and get to know that person. And the students who do that are the ones who get recommendation letters for internships. And I get it. I mean, I know it can be a little scary talking to an adult or somebody who seems like an authority figure. But I want to encourage you to really advocate for yourselves and to see your education as your education, meaning you get to have some say in how it's crafted and how it unfolds, because it's going to make all the difference in the world, and you'll thank yourself for it, and it's something you want to teach your own kids as well. So So that's my answer to that, is that you just need to find either an English teacher, social studies teacher, or any teacher who is interested and who will just read your stuff before it gets submitted. And as Laura said, we'll make available the link for the sign up sheet that teachers have to sign up. But we encourage you to participate. And for those students and many students who aren't able to participate live with us on the Fridays, we're going to be recording those sessions, and so you can watch them, on demand whenever you want to. We've got really cool recent alumni of the University of Oregon who we're doing like profile stories on them. So giving photojournalism tips and writing tips and all kinds of stuff. So there's going to be a lot of resources there that you can use and grow from. So I could try to show a video. Should I?
Yeah, we have about 15 minutes.
Yeah, okay. I'll try. Now, this might be a little choppy. They may have to edit it in later, but I think this particular video is fun because it shows all the kinds of exciting things you can do in the journalism world. So this is from a class that I taught a couple of summers ago. It was one of our Gateway classes, Gateway 3. We actually have shifted the curriculum, so this class doesn't kind of exist in this way anymore. But the way we did it was we partnered with Eugene Parks and Rec, and we went out and did stories like on all the different programs and things that they do. So let me pull this up here and try to play it. And I apologize if it stutters a little bit or whatever. Maybe we can also put the link to it later if you want to access it. But let me just share here. Okay, here we go.
Learning to break out of my shell. I used to be, still am kind of the most shy person. It's hard for me to just go up to people and ask them a question, but that's what you have to do here.
I'm learning just to go with the flow, trying to run around, just trying to find good B-roll, good places to interview as well, just working with the situation, with the environment to try to find the best thing to do.
It's teaching me that you can't be afraid if there's something you want to cover or to get to the best story, you just kind of have to put yourself out there.
I think the real world piece of Gateway 3 is absolutely critical. On the one hand, it really excites the students and gives them a taste of what it's really going to be like out there.
It's different teaching it within four walls, but actually getting out here and doing it on such tight deadlines really prepares us for that.
As far as stories go, what we've found to be really important is, of course, the narrative arc, and there has to be a natural rise and fall to a story.
It's easy to do a story about, a kid that goes rafting or a kid who goes kayaking or something like that. But the real challenge is to find a specific, unique story, something that really gets beneath the surface of just trying something new, but really maybe there's something beyond that they're able to discover.
I'm learning the impact of emotions in a story and telling somebody's story. It's so much more impactful than just information. You always hear you should always be an active listener when you're speaking to people, but you think you are, but then when you get into situations like this, you really realize oh my gosh, I really heard what the person said or something.
It was a learning experience, just being on a sailboat, trying to take videos of it. What do I need to capture? I need to be laying down, I need to be moving around, and so I kind of was just jumping around the boat, just trying to get everything that I needed.
When the sun was coming down, we got a lot of cool photos, and he kind of showed us ropes and different techniques of how to cast the sail and stuff like that. So it's pretty interesting. I've never gone sailing before, so.
We're kind of doing a feature story, so it's not more of an ad, but at the same time, it's still using some of the techniques that I'll need to know to be successful in advertising.
I think that the J School is wonderful in that sense that they offer these opportunities. This is a great way to have a firsthand experience in what a lot of students are wanting to do after they graduate. I thought these little kids they cannot control themselves in the class, but actually they really listen to the teachers. So that's really good.
Just as far as actually doing the work goes, I think it's a really good experience. Like, I've never worked really with any type of multimedia.
If we only sit in class, we will never know like what we'll face in the society.
I feel like language is quite a barrier for me. So I'm sometimes scared for talking to people or something like that. I just become more brave to talk to people or like make an interview or call somebody. So
it has made me kind of branch out and kind of go out of my comfort zone. I had to go up on a ropes course, like 20 feet in the air with the camera, trying to balance and take photos that weren't blurry. So that was really interesting.
Also learning interview skills and how to try to build a rapport with the people you're interviewing and making sure that they feel comfortable enough to open up to you.
For our students, it just provides an invaluable real-world experience. They are out there gathering material and putting it together for a client to actually use, which is so exciting for them and really sets the stage for the work that they're going to continue to do in the future.
I personally don't think that there's any better way to develop your skills than to just fall 100% into a situation like this.
Something we're going to be doing in the real world, like you're going to have to go out and speak with clients and do videos for them, and without this experience doing it, you're going to be thrown into the real world and have no idea what you're doing.
All right. Hopefully that played back okay. I don't know what it looked like, but yeah. So other questions people might have, or I can talk about other kinds of things. I just can't say enough about just the fun and sense of adventure that comes with working in the journalism field. The people that you meet, the rich experiences that you have. It's phenomenal. It's really phenomenal. I wouldn't change anything about it. Did you have some other questions, Laura, or other questions that people have?
Well, I am just blown away with the things that you do and the way your reach, your span to not only be able to offer all of these opportunities to college students, but that you're able to open it up to high school students to participate. So we're really thankful for that, and we'll definitely be showcasing that for making sure our students have those links and can participate. Yeah, oh, go ahead.
It's Gateway 3, a class at UO. So Gateway is a class. There used to be Gateway 1 and 2 and then Gateway 3, and we don't have Gateway 3 anymore, but we still have Gateway. And you do have to talk to strangers. This is it's funny. I teach a class called J100, which is the first class that most students in our school take. And one of my tips is talk to strangers. Now, I know that everyone's parent told you never to talk to strangers, but you'd be surprised. Once you're an adult and you can safely talk to strangers and you both have your masks on, you'd be surprised who you might meet. I was one of those Apple geeks who used to sit outside the store at 4 a.m. and wait for the new iPhone. People don't do that so much anymore. Now you can order it online or whatever. But I did that here in Eugene several years ago, and I met the husband of a couple that does like these really cool retreats in these really incredible places. And they ended up hiring me to produce a video about their business. And it was only because I was willing to talk to a stranger. I also was in an airport coming back to Eugene at one point and met a gentleman who had a service dog with him, a golden retriever. Come to learn that he was a veteran from a U.S. veteran who had served in Afghanistan and had a really incredible and very touching story. And we were looking at even maybe doing a documentary about him because he was so fascinating. And we decided not to. I'll tell you the reason we didn't. This is one of these issues regarding ethics in journalism. I noticed while I was interviewing him that maybe some of my questions were sort of triggering some of his past experiences in a negative way. And I just basically said, you know what? I'm not sure you're ready for this right now. Let's not do it. Even though I thought it was a really great story, you know, we never want to do harm and cause someone to suffer. And so we just didn't do it. But we remain friends. He still every now and again will text me, and you know, he's doing a lot better now and everything else. But you just talking to strangers can open up all kinds of doors. And so now someone says, do you think journalism is best fit for extroverts? Are you disadvantaged if you're an introvert? Well, no. So I believe, first of all, that the best work isn't just done by one person, it's done in teams. So sometimes introverts will team up with extroverts, and together they can do really great stories. So some of the best writers are introverts. They would describe themselves as introverts because they take the time to really think more deeply, to really think about the impact of what they're saying, and really act with care and caution. So I think journalism needs both. Alex Tizon, who unfortunately passed away, was a Pulitzer-winning journalist. He was one of our professors at the School of Journalism, and Alex was definitely an introvert. He would describe himself as an introvert. He wrote amazing stories, you know, published in the Atlantic and in the Seattle Times, and he covered the Katrina disasters in New Orleans and everything else. And, you know, so we need introverts just as much as we need extroverts. And sometimes when you team people up, they can bring out the best in each other. So that's my answer for that.
Go along with that, Ed, would you share, you talked a little bit about the different types of journalism as far as, you know, written versus visual, but can you explain it a little bit more in the school? If somebody were to go to the School of Journalism, aren't there's like 5 different?
Yeah, so there are different tracks. So, you know, so there's investigative journalism, which is really often really time and labor intensive work to uncover. Sometimes it involves like looking at public documents and trying to, you know, trace just the you know, really in-depth storytelling, which can take a lot of time. There are people who cover food and, you know, and cover, you know, there's restaurant critics. That's a form of journalism. There's film and movie critics and television critics. There are people who cover fashion. There's obviously sports-related journalism. There's so many different aspects: travel and leisure, you know, healthcare, any area that you can think of. And don't for a minute think, you know, there are people out there who are saying, well, isn't journalism dying? No, it's not. It is not dying. I'll tell you, in terms of enrollments, even during COVID, our journalism school is going very strong with very strong numbers across the board. And the other thing is that it's, yes, newspapers might be going away in terms of the way that, you know, traditional newspapers showing up on your doorstep and people opening up a big thing and reading it. No, but there are more people reading and accessing information on their phones more than ever before. The New York Times subscriptions are up beyond, you know, what even their projections. There are more sources. You have to be careful with some of those sources, but there are more sources of information, and there's lots of jobs. As funny as I was watching from that video that I showed you from 2015, and I was thinking, oh, this one's working here and that one's working there. Almost everyone in that video is working in the field in some area that they're excited about.
That's fantastic. Does the School of Journalism work with when a student is ready to graduate and launch to career? Do they do specific job shadows, internships, or something that does?
So internships are a very important part of the process. I would say, you know, in my own career, It was an internship at another local station in Boston while I was a college student that had me end up getting asked to work at CNN. The woman who I had interned for reached out and said, I was really impressed when you were working with me as an intern. Do you think you're ready, to produce a show, And I said, yeah. And she said, yeah. And so I was. So one thing, and I think this is an area of every area of life, but, just, you never want to burn bridges. You always want to be that person that shows up on time, is reliable, responsible. This is a hard lesson for some people. They think, well, you don't know, like, for example, in courses like the video I showed you at Gateway, when you're on a team with 3 other people, and you got 3 people and one of them is late or not reliable, you don't know that one of those other 2 people could be in a position to hire you 10 years later and won't, because you weren't the person who was reliable and showed up on time and all those kinds of things. And I got to tell you, many of my classmates from when I was in college, I have worked with later in life. One of them, was a reference for the job I have now, so you just don't know. But I also think that when you, and it may not be journalism for you, but when you find the thing that just really excites you, that you really want to explore, the rest of it kind of takes care of itself. Your own, that'll fuel your enthusiasm. So for some people, it's environmental issues or being a veterinarian or, whatever it might be. If you can find that thing early that really gets, that you really get excited about, it'll take you a long way.
Well said. That is very true.
Yeah.
And you certainly have found that, Ed. So
yeah.
Lovely to hear your journey. And yeah, I feel like the School of Journalism just represents faculty from all over the world too, who have just had everyone is such a unique experience.
Yeah, we have some really amazing people. Really, really amazing people, and we get to live in an amazing place. Outside of the smoke weeks ago and everything else, we're very blessed to be able to. There are parts of California where you go out on a hike on a holiday or something, and it's so crowded you can't even park. Here, you can go and only see one other person. I was always amazed along, the McKenzie River, and I haven't been back up there since the fire damage and everything else to see, what the effect has been. But we really do, to be able to drive, 45 minutes to an hour and be at the coast, or another 45 minutes in another direction and be in the mountains, or go to Bend or go to Portland, or, we're just very, very fortunate to live in a place that is like Eden, it's just green and lush and beautiful, and I like the rain, actually.
Me too.
Yeah.
I have another tech question.
Sure.
In relation to journalism. So, in today's world, so much is virtual, social media oriented. Does a person have to be a pretty techie oriented person to be successful, or can they? What is your thought around that?
No. No, not really, because I was looking at my phone. So everything, this will do so much now. This will do high definition video that you can show on a movie screen. The quality of it, the sound. This has become a device that is being used for news gathering in ways that it couldn't have been 10 years ago or even 5 years ago. And so, I taught a class, a mobile media production class, about how to take your smartphone and use it for storytelling that we offered for many years, and we kind of put on hold for now. But yes, I think that it's not as complicated as it used to be. You don't have to be a techie to thrive in this profession, not in the way that you used to.
Well, Ed, it is always a pleasure to have you, and I'm
Thank
so
you.
glad that you've been, involved with SAIL for over the years, and
Thank you.
to be able to offer this information and your story to, we're sharing across the state of Oregon
Sure.
today. So there may be some questions that come up in the future, and
All right.
we'd
Sure.
love to send them your way if there's
Okay.
questions. But yeah, we have about a minute left. Is there any final things?
Final thought.
Yeah.
I just want to thank you, Laura. I think the SAIL program is so important, and we have partnered with you over the years in numbers of different ways, and helped to tell SAIL's story in terms of videos and things like that. And it's just great to have a program like this that helps support young people in pursuing their aspirations. I just honored to be a part of this today, and feel free to reach out afterwards, or anything else if you have questions about ways we can support you.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, some of the videos you have done for us in the past are amazing. Some of our videos on our website are from Ed and his teams in journalism school. So we're honored to, and we will be talking.
Okay.
So I appreciate everyone who watched today, and look at our website to find the recording of Ed's presentation and all of the additional links and ways to get involved as a young high school student. So thank you again, Ed.
Thank you. All right. See ya. Bye.